Okay everyone, let's sit down and talk about one of the most iconic revenge stories ever put to screen, especially because now you have a streaming version of it too. Yep folks, that's right, today we're going to talk about Man on Fire, and the legendary 2004 performance that helped cement Denzel's 2000s action hero aura. But here's the thing though, the 2004 movie was not the beginning. See, Man on Fire was a novel written by A.J. Quinnell, then we got the 1987 version with Scott Glenn, then we got the 2004 Denzel Washington version, followed by the brand new version starring Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Now, we could dive into the books, and yes, there is more than one, but nah. Today, our main focus is on how exactly the brand new 2026 show differs from the two films you know and love. Because let's be honest here, every reimagining comes with its own flair. The setting has completely moved. Right off the bat, this is the biggest change between the show and the movies. The 1987 movie, directed by Ali Chiraki, was set in Italy. It was specifically shot around Lake Como, Milan, and Rome. You get to see beautiful visuals like the serene lakeside landscapes of Lake Como, the grand European architecture, and the best part, one might say this was period accurate, because back in the 1980s, kidnappings were really common among wealthy Italian families. And then when the movie got remade in 2004, the setting took place in Mexico City. Tony Scott, the director, intentionally wanted this geographical move because he wanted to set the story in the present time. If this movie were to take place in modern Italy, it would have been a period piece, and Scott didn't want that. Instead, he went to Mexico City because kidnapping was a bigger threat there, with a documented kidnapping crisis. By doing that, Scott effectively set the story in reality. Every scene of the movie feels real because you'd think of those newspaper articles about real kidnapping cases. And now, in the 2026 show, the main present-day story moves to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Instead of treating this place just as a geographic location, the show uses Rio's class divides, local politics, and neighborhood power structures as part of the thriller engine. Each setting may be geographically different, but the core of community and threat remains the same. Creasy's name, background, and inner demons. Creasy is a tortured soul, no matter which version you look at. But every Creasy comes with a different type of torture in his heart. What I mean is this. Look at the 1987 Creasy, Christian Creasy, the ex-CIA agent who lives in Italy, completely burned out. He has nothing that brings the spark out in him. And then, despite being a little damaged and a little problematic, he gets hired as a bodyguard. And then chaos ensues. Say what you want, but Christian Creasy is the kind of hero who basically broods throughout the movie when he isn't getting his revenge. And fans loved it at the time because the 80s were all about brooding heroes. Then, in 2004, we had Denzel Washington's John Creasy. He's a former Force Recon Marine and CIA officer who has completely given up on his life. He's an alcoholic and despondent, basically a man down on his luck and mental health before he's hired to protect Peter Ramos. We never get to know what exactly went down in his past that turned him this way, but Denzel, oh boy, he conveys the drama, trauma, intensity, and melancholy in every scene, sometimes with just a look. This is one of his best performances today. And now we come to the 2026 John Creasy. Mateen's Creasy gets a lot more detail than any of his former versions do. That's the perk of the TV format, I assume. Because the show goes into harrowing details about his PTSD, we learn about the mission where he is the only survivor after all of his crewmates were killed. Ravaged with survivor's guilt, Creasy drinks heavily. He's covered in scars. And in the beginning of the series, we see him trying to take his own life. So, unlike the other two movies, where his whole trauma was backstory, in the show, Creasy's trauma becomes the driving force, the inciting tragedy, bombing versus kidnapping. Now, when I first started watching the show, I was mentally preparing for another kidnapping. I kid you not. I was sitting there going through all the characters and making a list in my head of who's going to get kidnapped and who isn't, so that I didn't end up getting too attached to the character. In the 1987 movie, Samantha Samboleto gets kidnapped by the Italian mafia, and in the 2004 movie, Lupita Pita Ramos gets kidnapped in front of Creasy's eyes. Creasy tries to stop it and almost dies because he's shot multiple times, but then, when he recovers, he basically mows down the entire criminal organization responsible. So you do get why I was a little paranoid, right? But now we get the Netflix series, and here Here, there's a massive bombing. Yeah, a bombing. Creasy is staying with Paul Rayburn and his family, and the attack wipes out everyone except Poe, Rayburn's daughter. Losing his old friend is what pushes Creasy over the edge. Now, I know I said I won't talk about the books, but I have to mention this. The Netflix show doesn't just echo the first novel. It also clearly pulls from the second Creasy book, The Perfect Kill. If you know, you know. The girl and the bond at the center of the story. Man on Fire is all about the bond between Creasy and the kid he's protecting at the time. The different bond they have changes the way Creasy goes about business. What I mean is, look at Peta Ramos. Before meeting her, Creasy is absolutely down in the ditches. He doesn't even smile, but then he meets Ramos. As they hang out more and more, you can feel something changing in Creasy. He holds his body differently. He speaks differently, and there's a softness in his eyes. He even smiles at her. There is this fatherly bond between them. And so, when Ramos gets kidnapped, he goes all out. And I have to say it, Denzel and Fanning made that relationship feel so real. In comparison, the relationship between Creasy and Boleto in the 1987 film is very much businesslike. I mean, there is a tenderness between them, but not more than that, you know? Nothing like the father-daughter bond in the 2004 film. And then we come to the Netflix series. Here, Poe is a teen, and Creasy doesn't take the job of protecting her. There is no monetary gain there. He protects her because A, out of loyalty to his dead friend, and B, because of the connection between the two. And this connection feels more mature than the Creasy and Ramos relationship we got, and deeper than the Creasy and Boleto relationship. The trauma that Poe and Creasy share gives their relationship this texture that we've never seen before. Personal revenge versus global conspiracy. This is another major change in the story's basic rulebook. Instead of striking like a mafia family feud or a criminal organization, the Netflix show goes full throttle and gives us a geopolitical thriller. We have terrorist cells, multinational conspiracies, corrupt politicians, and even a president in the mix. Now, this is some high ambition, and some viewers may really like it. Others, though, may feel that this kind of pulls the show away from the emotionally raw relationship between the damaged man and the child who saved each other. Because, of course, when you have a big conspiracy like this, you are going to spend precious screen time building on it, and that means a cutdown of Poe and Creasy's runtime. Movie versus series format. The story gets room to breathe. This is what I meant when I said the perk of the TV format earlier. Because when you have a movie, you have to compress the whole story into a particular runtime. It could be 92 minutes like the first film, or 146 minutes like the second film. But there is a runtime. You can't show everything in those minutes, you have to pick and choose. But that pressure kind of alleviates when you have 7 episodes, giving the story roughly 5+ hours to breathe. That immediately gives the showrunners more space to flesh out aspects of the character they couldn't flesh out before. We finally get Creasy's backstory. We get different subplots. We also have the opportunity to have more than one cast member going through an arc across the runtime. However, that comes with its cons too. The expanded format can also weigh down the central story if the conspiracy and supporting characters start taking up too much space. So there's basically a very fine line balance between the two, tone and visual style. Tony Scott versus Netflix standard. Now, you can argue as much as you want with me about all the other points I've mentioned here, but this one is probably the easiest to notice. The 2004 movie is iconic for the performance and the visual approach Tony Scott took. We have disorientating edits, washed out colors, aggressive typography, and double exposure, all making us feel the madness and the rage that Creasy is feeling in his heart. In comparison to him, you have the 1987 movie, which was a beautiful, haunting European thriller. Nothing super in-your-face about it, you know? But now, the 2026 show has a much more familiar streaming thriller look. It's competently slick and striking, but if I just took a shot from this show and put it next to any other thriller show that came out this year, unless you recognize the characters, you might think they're the same. Some viewers may find this more familiar look less formally distinctive than Tony Scott's 2004 approach. And honestly, I'm not a critic, but I see it too. Drawing from 2 novels, not one. If you're a book fan, then this show must have been a treat for you. And as I mentioned before, unlike the first two films, this show took inspiration from the first two Creasy novels instead of just loosely adapting the first book. The show's bombing-driven structure and larger conspiracy angle connected more strongly to the perfect kill than the earlier films did. That second Creasy novel uses the real-life Pan Am Flight 103 disaster as the catalyst that shatters Creasy's family and sends him on a path of vengeance. So when I tell you that this is the most ambitious, adaptation-wise, out of the three, I mean it. Now, whether it will be the most successful or not is a different question. Lone wolf versus team player. In both films, you get this very obvious sense that Creasy is alone. He has some contacts and confidants, sure, but he uses them to get the ball rolling. The rest, Creasy does on his own. The Netflix show takes that away from Creasy. Here, we have Creasy and company, with Valerio Mello, her cousin Livro, the gang members, the contacts, etc. As the runtime is no longer bound the way films are, we see Creasy build a team and rely on it throughout the season, because with a big threat like this, there is no way Creasy would have been able to succeed by himself. But at the same time, emotionally, you can understand that this team building is a way of showing that Creasy is growing out of his shell and trusting people again. But this kind of storytelling can have mixed reactions. Some fans may think it's awesome because that's how it should have been. Others may feel like this is just a waste of runtime and a dilution of Creasy as a lone wolf figure, Creasy's fate and what it all means. Without spoiling too much, in the first film, Creasy survives. It isn't a triumphant resolution, but it is indeed a resolution. Then, in the 2004 film, we get the most devastating ending, spoiler alert, where Creasy dies. He trades his life for Peeta's safe return, and we basically have to sit with the grief. The 2026 series does something in the middle. Creasy survives, but he's badly injured. Thematically speaking, the show ends with this hope of something better in the future, and I understand why they did that, because the ending leaves the door open for season 2, even though Netflix hasn't officially renewed the show yet. All three endings have significance, but you gotta be the one to decide which one hits harder for you. And there you have it, guys, the 10 major differences that stood out to me when I compared the two films with the show. The show is a reimagining, so of course, it has spots where it improves upon the original, and it has spots where it falls short. But either way, it's bigger and longer than any previous Quinnell adaptation has attempted. Let me know in the comments which one you like the most out of the three. Personally, I love Denzel in his prime, so 2004 for me all the way. Though I do have a soft spot for Rio de Janeiro. But anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!